In this video we'll be looking at importing text files using SSIS package that we built in the previous video. We're going to be using a file connection to connect to the file that we're going to import. We'll need a file variable to actually hold the name of the file, because we're going to be using a for each file loop container to examine a folder and import all the files that are actually in that folder. We're also going to use a script task to dynamically set the file connection, and we're actually going to use a data flow task to import this into a staging table, and then we shall consider how to write bad rows or rejected rows into a regex file. So what we'll do now is get started and bring up bids, and we'll have a look at how we actually set about doing this. So the first thing we've got is a file variable called file name at the top. So we've got that already set. The files themselves are going to be held in an import files folder. We've just simply got one file in there, a good file at the moment with two columns, column 1, column 2, names and some numbers. Okay, so let's go around back into bids. So let's create a flat file connection. Simply call this import file. Browse and we'll connect to the file initially. So it reads in all the metadata. The first row has column names in it, so we can preview this file as well. So you can see it brings it in nicely. Simple comma separated file. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is add a for each loop container. And the for each loop container is going to examine the file path. Let's drag that across. Let's configure this, rename it first, and we'll configure it. Okay, so our collection is for each file, and we're going to browse to the folder that we want to actually look at, although this will be overridden at runtime using the config. And the way we actually do that is by using expressions. Okay, so the directory that we're going to be looking at is actually held in the variable file path. That file path is read at runtime, so it just reads it from that config table. So it's actually looking at that. Oh, and we've noticed that we're missing a backslash off there, so probably need to add that one in. Yeah, that's looking at the right place. So the only other thing we needed to do, let's just make this a little bit bigger, was add in the file name. So for each file that's in there, yeah, we need to actually look in that folder pointed to by the file path, and we need to bring in the file name and extension into our variable file name. So we now have file name, file path, and what we'll do now is we'll do a script task. This is where we're going to dynamically set the connection of the import file to the file path and file name that the for each loop container is actually accessing. So let's get in there. Read-only variables, we need two at this stage. We need the file path and file name. That's all we need. And editing the script, we'll simply set the DTS connections of the import file, which is our flat file connection manager. We'll set that equal to the file path plus the file name. So the connection string, and we said we'd set that equal to file path and file name. So import file, connection string, that's read from config, and that's read from the for each loop. So I'll just put a comment in so we know which comes from where. Okay, so that dynamically sets the connection to the import file connection manager. The next thing to do is a data flow task, where we're simply going to have flat file source and a SQL destination. Just rename this import file. Let's connect the two together. Okay, right, let's edit the data flow. Flat file source, simply call this import file. Let's configure this, import file, yep. Columns, 1 and 2, that's good. Preview it, yeah, it's fine. Okay, and now SQL destination, we'll call this staging file or staging table. Okay, and you can see our staging file has 2 columns, column 1 and some number. But for the moment that's an empty staging table. Let's connect these two up. Configure the SQL connection. We don't want it going into the config connection, we want it going into the destination. Pick staging file as the destination table and then map the columns across. Column 1's come across, just put column 2 in. Okay, save the work, we're ready to go. So the for each loop container, looking at a folder, picks up a file name, puts it into the file name variable. The script task sets the connection of the file manager, of the connection manager for import file, and then the data flow task simply connects to it and imports it into the staging file table. Let's run that. So yeah, all good. 4 rows imported, and let's have a look. And there you see in the staging table we've got the 4 rows. Okay. So what we want to do now is look at how to collect rejected rows. And what we do is on the file, on the source, we would actually tell the source to redirect rows to a different place. Well, first of all, we need to actually create a rejected rows file. So what we'll simply do is create another flat file connection manager. We'll call this rejects, and we'll let it have the same. Yeah, let's get to the right place. Okay, here we go, import files, yep. Bad files, bad file. Okay, so it's just going to simply have the same number of columns. We've already got a bad file already there. First row will have column names, that's fine. Yeah, you can see some bad data in there because obviously that column 2 should be a number. Okay, so we've got a rejects connection manager, which is where the rejected rows are going to be sent to. But what we've got to do is tell the source not to fail the component on an error, but to actually redirect the row. And also, on a truncation error, we want it to redirect the row. So a quick way of doing this is just highlight all 4 rows down the bottom, say redirect row, and apply it to all 4. So all 4 conditions there for both columns will redirect rows, and the connection manager is the source connection is telling us that there is no output line for the redirected rows, so they will be lost. So what we'll do is we'll put another flat file connection manager on here as a destination. This is going to be the rejected rows flat file, and we'll simply connect the red line onto there. Yep. So the redirected rows will go into the rejected file. We'll set it as rejects, mappings. What we'll actually do is we'll take the full row, put that in column 1, and we'll put the error code as column 2. What it will do is just simply create another line and put the error code in that. So that's our mappings done. Control flow now. What we must do is dynamically set the connection of the rejects file, because we need a rejected folder and we need to rename the file as well. So what we'll do is we need to add in another package variable. We'll call this reject path. It'll be a string, and that'll be a different folder to the import import files folder. That's not got a bad files, it's got rejected. Okay, we haven't actually got a rejected files. We'll create that folder. Okay, there we go. So in the import files, we've got a bad file. Looks like that. And we've got a good file. Okay. We're going to write the rejected path to config now, our SQL config, just in case we need to change it at a later date. So we'll write the variable rejected path into the SQL SSIS configurations table. Yep, all done. Now in the script task, what we've got to do is we've got to add that as a read-only variable, and then we will be able to dynamically set the connection for the rejects file connection manager. So we'll simply copy and paste that row and then edit it accordingly. So this is going to be the rejects file, and the file path is going to be the reject path. And what we'll do is we'll add some indicator to the front of the file to indicate that this file contains bad rows, so it needs investigating. So we'll just prefix it with bad rows and an underscore, and then all will be done on the script task. Okay, so that's it. That's all done and dusted in the script task, and away we go. Okay, one more thing I wanted to do was actually add in a SQL task to truncate the staging table. So let's actually add that in now. Let's configure this. Let's rename it first and then we'll configure it. So truncate staging. Make it a little bit bigger and then we'll edit it. Okay. Connections training destination, and it's simply truncate table staging file. All done and dusted, and then let's connect that up to the for each loop container. So we run the truncate staging first, and then off we go examining the file. Okay, let's just check this now. So the import file, rejected rows goes in there. Let's give it a run. So that flashed twice, so we've processed 2 files by the looks of that. Let's have a look in our staging table. The first file contained 4 rows, the good file, and the bad file contained 1 good row. So there's the good row. Let's have a look in the bad file. As you can see, 3 bad rows and then 1 good row at the bottom. So that 1 good row went in, and the bad rows didn't. The good file contained 4 good rows, so that's why we've got 5 in the staging table. So let's have a look at the rejected and see what's been created in the rejected files folder. So we've got a bad rows good file, which will be an empty file, but it will contain 2 column names. And the bad file itself contains the 3 bad rows, but because the 3 bad rows have a carriage return line feed on the end, the error code comes after them. So you actually get the error message or the error number at the end of them. So that's it really. That's importing files using a for each loop container, also setting the connection dynamically, and writing error rows to an error file.